In today's Oxford moment, we're going to take a look at how to open up a skein of yarn and how to put it back nice and neat and tidy again. We're going to open up a few different skeins. We're going to take a look at Violet Jane Fine, a Violet Jane Regular, and another brand here as well, so you can see what other companies have done when they wind their yarns. Here with the Violet Jane Fine, we're going to just carefully open this up. We're going to slide the tag through so that we can pop this open, and it should come open like a hula hoop. Nice and open there. And you want to make sure that all the yarns are running around the same way in a nice smooth circle, and you haven't got some of them tangled up and coming back against themselves. So we've got that opened up nice and neatly like so. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off our tag. This has a fine strand tied around it. We're going to give that a little snip, and we're going to hold on to this, and we're going to put it back on the ball. If we wind it into a ball, we can tuck it in there or tie it back to it. Or if we bundle the skein back up again neatly, we can put it back on, because this has our information on it as to, which yarn it was, the name of the color, and those kind of details, so that if we want to reorder at some point, we have that nice and handy for us. The next thing we're going to do is look for any extra ties. Sometimes there might be some extras of these thin, fine strings. If there is, just snip those off and carefully pull them out of the yarn. If there isn't any of those, the next spot that you're going to look for is an area on the yarn where there is a tie that is holding the skein together. You may come across a knot that is just isolated on its own with it. If that's the case and it's not going around the skein and holding the yarn together, don't cut it. That one's just a join in the yarn that happens as they're taking the yarn off of cones and into the skein shape for us. You're going to look for the one instead that's going around the yarn. So here you can see we've got this strand coming across, and this one actually has a little bit of an extra funny tail on it. If you come across this, it's not a big deal at all. All you're going to do is give a little snip here, cut this extra little bit off, and you're going to hold on to that. That's still a great usable piece of yarn. So you're going to set that aside and keep it and punch with it when you're ready to need that little bit. So then the next step is that we're going to undo this yarn here, and we're going to unwrap the skein. So we're going to give that a little snip, and then we're going to start to carefully undo this so that there's no longer any little sections tied, and we don't have any yarn wrapping around anymore. Normally, I would do this on a Swift, which is a device that's going to hold the yarn nice and steady and tidy for us as we wind it off with a ball winder. Or I'll put it over my knees if you're going to wind it by hand, or over the back of a chair. Those are all simple ways that we can wind this off, and that helps to prevent us from getting into a tangled mess. If you're doing like I did just now, though, and you're opening it up on a table surface, do take care not to drop it. If you drop this while it's undone, it can end up being quite tangled, and then you have a whole nother project on your hands of trying to make it into a tidy, handleable piece of yarn again for you. So once we've got that undone, now we can choose to wind that off however technique you want to use for that purpose. I'm going to set this one aside, and we're going to take a look at another one. Here's our rug yarn. Again, we have the tag here. We're just going to carefully slide that out of place. We're going to open this up like so. And we very clearly on this one can immediately see where the tie is going around. And we can see that we've got one other tie where the tag is. So once again, I'm going to snip that little tag off, remove it, set it aside. We're going to hold on to this to put it back with this later for identification purposes. And there's my spot with my little tie. So again, I can see the little knot. And it's not an isolated knot on its own. It is a knot that's connected to the string that's going around the skein and holding our yarn together. So we're going to cut that little knot, and then that lets us untie the yarn. And then we can take a look, and we want to make sure that it's now flowing freely. And if I was to trace this all the way around, it would just keep going nice and smoothly around and around. And same thing with this other end. If I was to chase that around, it would just keep on going. If I was to chase it and I was to find that there was another spot that was wrapped, I would undo that section. Or if I was to chase it and it seemed like perhaps it was tangled, but it's not wrapped around, then I don't try to do anything. Usually in that circumstance, you just need to turn the yarn around a little bit and it will start to flow freely for you. Now let's take one more look at the other brand there. We're going to open this one up just the same as we did with our Violet Jane. So we've got it open like a nice little hula hoop here, and we're going to look for the tie again. We can see that there's a wrap around at this point. When I opened it up, I had some yarn that was not where it was supposed to be. It's come from the other side. And you can tell that it's not where it's supposed to be because it's outside of this tie. You can see here that this encircles the skein of yarn, and yet this is isolated on its own. This actually belongs over on the other side. So I'm going to pull it back down to where it's supposed to go. There we go. So here's the wrap around. It goes all the way around and there is no tie in that section. So that's not the spot that we're going to try and undo it. We're going to keep looking. And I think we found it. Here it is right here. It's wrapped around the skein all the way. I can see that I've got everything encased, so there's no strands that are out of place. And I can very clearly see that the little tie is there. So this is the spot I'm going to cut. I can then unwrap the yarn, and I'm going to chase this one along. And you always have two options. You've got end A or end B, and one of them is going to be the correct one. We're going to choose B this time. We're going to go around, and I chose the correct one. And I know that because I get to the next spot where there's a wraparound. If I had chosen the incorrect one, as I came to where the next wraparound, it would just run underneath. It wouldn't be part of the wrap. So I know I chose the right one because I got there and it's wrapped around. So that means I can just undo that wrap. And then I can follow it around until I get to the third spot where we have yarn wrapping around our skein, like so. And I'm going to undo that one as well. In this circumstance, I know with this brand that there's always 3 of those. So I should have it at this point that I can start to chase this around and it will just flow freely off. Sometimes though, there's a 4th tie. We always want to look for those other little anomalies there. If there's those extra ones, we're going to undo those ones too. And always make sure that it's flowing freely before we start to wind it off to help prevent us from getting into a tangled mess. It may be that you've opened up a skein of yarn and you want to put it back into the skein. In that circumstance, what you're going to do is get your hula hoop shape nice and round. You're going to give a little bit of a pull, not too hard, but firm enough that it's holding it steady. And you're going to start to twist. So we're twisting and twisting. And depending on how tight you like your skein to be wound, you're going to twist it up. You're going to double it back on itself. And we're going to pop one end through the other, just like so. It might look a little weird like this. You're just going to give a little tug on the opposite end to kind of pull it out. And then voila, we have it back into a nice tidy skein that can go back onto the shelf without getting into a big mess. I hope this little tip today helps us stop you from getting tangled up. To learn more, please visit the Oxford Rug Cooking School website to explore our online courses or to find an Oxford Certified Instructor near you. You can also sign up for our newsletter to stay in the loop. The information is in the description below. Thanks and happy punching.